I thought I'd come out today and do a video on British Steel Rotherham from the 1980s. I'm on Sheffield Road between Rotherham's in that direction and Sheffield's in the other direction. So this is I'm on Fullerton Road at the moment, so this is Fullerton Road here, and Sheffield Road here, and just there was the Fullerton Arms pub, but that got knocked down probably 20 years ago. I can't even see a sign on the road for Fullerton Road, but I'm going to walk up here now. And this site was called Steel, Peech and Tozer. Before the 1950s, it was a private company, and then after the war, they then created British Steel or United Steel, and then after the 80s then started privatising things back again. So I'm actually down at the bottom where Rickles used to be, and I'll go up one side and show you, and then up the other side. But where you can see all these new builds would have been Rickles, where they were doing ring roll products. That would be the type of thing, making wheels for trains and things like that. Why that shut down I don't know, because there's still plenty of trains, trams and various things around. It wasn't the most modern of plants, it did want some upgrades to it. But most of this land is still actually disused from the days I worked back here in the 80s. But they are gradually starting to build other units on here now, and I think this may be a bio plant or something like that. We also knew this area is Templeborough, and this is Templeborough biomass power plant. And that iron bridge there used to walk from one side of the river down to the other on the Rickles part of the plant. Now I preferred working on the Templeborough side of British Steel Rotherham, and that's why I did all my training across here. But we were moved across to the Old Work side. I didn't like the Old Work side at all, really difficult with buses. Whereas this road, Sheffield Road, the 69 bus came down between Sheffield and Rotherham. So whichever town you wanted to end up in at the end of the day, whether it was Sheffield or Rotherham, you could get on the 69 bus going in either direction. Whereas when you was out at Old Work, it was a job and a half. You'd either have to go into Park Gate, walk up there, or walk down to the mushroom garage, get a bus into Rotherham, and then get a bus home from there. So that actually pushed me to learn to drive in 1983. It put me under more pressure to pass my driving test, because I was getting the 19 into Rotherham. Then I was having to get another bus out to Rotherham to the mushroom garage. Then I got like a 2 mile, 3 mile, run or walk to get to the steelworks from there, and then the same when I was going home at night, so I used to come home absolutely shattered. But you can see they've built quite a few more units on here now. Just imagine there were all big steel sheds around here at one bit. You can still see some at the back over there. I'll zoom in there. But these sheds were everywhere at one bit, and they're not now. It's more like the modern units. Thousands of people worked here. I think at the ramp bit area, which we're coming up to in a bit, I think there's about 9,000 people worked there. But when I did my apprenticeship across at British Steel Rotherham, and I'm going to show you where we did that as well, we had to do 2 years in a training centre, and I was electronics, process control. So even though I was electronics, process control, I still had to do time in all the other crafts. So I'd do a month in machining, a month in electrical, a month in welding, and various other things. The training was absolutely fantastic. I even had a week out at Hollowford in Castleton on an out of bounds. I was asked, would I prefer to be at the training centre for a week, or would I prefer to go on an out of bounds? And I think about 3 of us put his hands up to go on the out of bounds in our department anyway. So that was a good week in Castleton. So we did 2 years in the training centre. I did a day every week at Rotherham College, and did an HNC in Industrial Measurement and Control. And because I got so many O levels, I just jumped to the second year on that. So instead of doing a 5-year ONC and HNC, I did a 4-year one. Even though we hadn't got permanent jobs, they said we got no time to go and do an HND, or they weren't going to support us. But at the same time, they said we've only got temporary jobs. They were expecting us, as people who just come out of his apprenticeship, to be on steel plant on his own at weekends, which I think was a massive health and safety risk. I had no issue actually working on my own on the plant, but if there was nobody else in the actual workshop other than me all that time, I thought it was pretty dangerous, because I could have been laid out on plant somewhere and nobody would be looking for me. But you can see over there, that road that's been cut through, that goes way back, and that just shows you the size of the steelworks back up there. After my 2 years in the training centre, then I had to do a few months in each area of British Steel Rotherham. And even though I worked across here, I don't know half of what went across here. But I can tell you the bits I do know as I'm coming up here. I even worked at the wash in the telecommunications centre, and that gave me an opportunity to move to Midland Bank in 1985. Like I said, we were told we were doing temporary work, or we're on a temporary job, but they were expecting us to be doing a weekend shift on his own. So I think the job must have been quite important if they were forcing us onto a weekend on his own, but at the same time they won't give us a permanent job. So I had an opportunity to move from British Steel to Midland Bank in 85, and I bit their hands off at that time. But if they'd invested in me a little bit more, got me through to an HND, put me in a decent job, then I'd have still been probably at British Steel a lot longer, another 10 years. But this has all been replaced now. This is post office, I think, and one bit, these were massive. This is where the ramp area was, massive steel sheds down here. I even had a couple of months in Swindon Laboratories, which was a development and research area for British Steel. I thoroughly enjoyed that, but nobody asked me whether I wanted to stay there, and that was one of the problems. We did like I said, we did 2 years in a training centre, and then 2 years on plant. But I never saw the training centre after that. Basically, I just get instructions from above that I was going to be working in this place, or I was going to be working in that place, but no consultation with me. And I was probably a little bit naive at that age, 16 to 20. We were being used to some degree. Not asked what we'd like our futures to be, and I'd have probably preferred to have been at the research and development area. Over then we actually built PCB boards, which was electronic circuit boards, dipped them in acid. There you can see parcel force. That one wasn't parcel force down there, but these were all massive steel sheds, and when we get up to Magna you'll see what they were like. But from where I set off to up here was all British Steel, Rotherham, Templeborough, Steel, Peech and Tozer. So at Swindon Laboratories was building these PCB boards and then inserting components into them, soldering them in, and these were actually being used to find flaws in steel. As the steel came down the mill, it would paint onto the actual bars when they needed cutting back where there was some damage, and that was all automated. But this is a massive, if you can see the size of this, these are all massive steel sheds, the black steel sheds. At one bit there'd have been 2 or 3 of these running down here, and around this area also there was Templeborough rolling mills, and that was actually a private company. But what I can't understand is the steel industry did okay up to the 1950s when it was in private hands. Then it went into public ownership, but then when it came out the other side they basically destroyed it. What I'm saying is I actually believe that the steel industry should be private, but the way that Thatcher's government went about privatising it was totally wrong. They just butchered companies, or butchered British Steel and trashed most of it. It's a shame I can't do a bird's eye view of this area, because you just really see the extent of this. So this was a Steel, Peech and Tozer, Templeborough side of British Steel, rather than on the Allwork side There was another big steel plant over there. Originally it was Park Gate, where they had big, I'm not sure if it was blast furnace or open hearth furnaces over there. And there's a famous Diana Dawes film with that on from the 60s. And then they created a modern plant at Aldwark. And like I said, I always felt very isolated over there. It's very soulless sort of place, but I can't recognise this place. All the big steel sheds have gone. I reckon though there were far more people employed over here when it was British Steel Rotherham. Like I said, the ramp area, which I've walked past now, employed about 9,000 people in its heyday alone. But they've made a right mess of this road along here now. So you can see Magna here now. That steel shed, that's how it was right from the bottom of Fullerton Road, Ickles, all the way up to here. So it's basically gone now, just replaced by these modern units. Probably people get a benefit to locate here for a while, and then that benefit goes. So they clear off and you're ending up with loads of new units being built, not actually being operated. But I've just seen something up there saying Magna 34 for sale. I don't know what that's about, but somebody's certainly making money out of the real estate here. Now here's a Temple Hotel. This used to be full of steel workers after a shift. Really basic inside, spit and sawdust, and that's it. So it looks like it's now a company's address. Says here the road's been resurfaced. It's an absolute disgrace to what it used to be. So what I was saying is that when it was privatised, the steel industry, they could have made a lot more out of it. We definitely had over capacity, because I know what went off in the steel industry in the 80s. But I think a lot of it could have been redirected. Could have been some slight pruning of certain areas, but to just dismantle the industry like they did. Like I said, it was a big industry before it got taken over, and then after it became public industry. It was totally destroyed. So this area here, all the way up to here, which is Magna now, this used to have 6 electric arc furnaces in it, and they were producing 200 tonne of molten metal at a time, probably doing it 3 times in every 24 hours. So that, imagine 6 electric arc furnaces in here. And I can tell you something, it didn't snow much in Rotherham in those days. It always seemed to, when we were at college in Rotherham, it always seemed to rain. So I'm sure you can imagine 6 electric furnaces in here. They didn't half create like a microclimate. Now if you imagine an electric arc furnace, it's like a big teapot. So you put your scrap metal in, and then what you do is you heat the scrap metal up, melt it down, and turn it back into molten steel and put it into ingots. Then once you've got it into big ingots, there used to be a big cogging mill behind it, and I can't remember ever seeing the big cogging mill. And the cogging mill turns it down more into a billet, and then put the billets through a rolling mill. So there was big roll. This was just like the arc shop, and then you got the big rolling mills behind it. And then in the end, what they had was a continuous caster. And basically, imagine you've got your big teapot of molten metal. You then pour that into like a big mould, and it carries on running down it and produces your billets. Now, like I said, there were 6 arc furnaces across here, and they kept moving them across to all work, and they destroyed this side. Strategically, it was a poor decision because we're really on the boundary between Sheffield and Rotherham. So if you're strategically wanting was the biggest melting shop in the world. So strategically you want it between Sheffield and Rotherham, and what they did is they moved it across to Rotherham. All grant based, all political and stupid. And that was why I left the steel industry, because it didn't matter how well you did your job. Some guy in Whitehall in London ruined that. And I'm just going to show you up here. You can see this above here. This will be catching all the fumes coming out, and we had to walk up in those areas, and I'm going to show you in a minute where one of our training afternoons was. These were the workshops for the process control round here in the bottom of these areas, and the electrical engineers who had been in one, and various other people. Now, if I remember rightly, this was sort of the main entrance into the melting shop. I used to have big locomotives running around in here, moving the ingots around and various other things, and the big moulds. And occasionally outside here you see a big mould on its side, and they'd have like big heater dryers in, because there was a big incident at Scunthorpe Steelworks where there was a little bit of water got into the bottom of the mould, and it creates intense pressure when you put molten metal in, and it had exploded everywhere. So before they put molten metal in, they have to make sure the moulds are actually absolutely dried. Now, one of the things is, we weren't all walking around in yellow vests. Yellow vests don't keep you safe. Common sense keeps you safe. We had helmets. We didn't wear them all the time. We wore them when we needed them. But nowadays, if you're walking around without an helmet on, you'll probably end up getting sacked. Safety boots, yeah. Always had my safety boots on. Always had a pair of overalls on. Now this big shed coming up, I'm not sure if this was British Steel or not. I suspect it was, because I'm sure it was probably black in the past, because where you see Magna, that's how the steelworks looked. It was black, painted black. And I'm pretty certain this was probably British Steel, but not 100% sure. Anybody watching this video, please comment. But I'm just going to show you what an afternoon was. An afternoon's training was. If you look at this big steel shed. Now you can see those white gantries on it. Well, one afternoon they just said to us, we're going to sit on top of here, and we sat on top of this big melting shop roof for an hour. And that was the idea, to get us acclimatised to heights, because even as an apprentice, 18-year-old, we'd be sent up into the rafters to clean cameras and various things in the roof. And you had to have a good thing with the heights. So you can imagine the peak of those buildings would be footwells in them. You can walk right across. And I'd be up there on my own as an 18-year-old. Not like it is nowadays, where everything, you have your hand held all the time. But they did actually take us up there for an hour, just got us used to it. And often when we across, one of the guys, this seen Pete Beardsall, I think his name was, he used to love walking in the roofs of the melting shop. And we'd go up to the top. I think he wanted to check on the fumigation plant. So we'd end up walking up into the top and back round the outside of the building. But I'll tell you one thing, we had thermocouples in the spouts of these furnaces, and when we walk into the actual room, the control room for the furnace, the floor was shaking with the actual intensity of the energy generated by these furnaces. Now this area where the main melting shop was, Spear, was known as Spear, sorry. I don't know if it was a technical name, it was called Spear, or whether the main reason was they found Roman remains under here. They found a spear. So like I said, I'm not sure if it was a technical name or whether it was because they found spear from Roman spear and things. So there's a Roman remains around here. But that area, going back to Spear, the melting shop,